This is the iPhone 15 Pro, and at the first glance it is a small upgrade. But Apple has improved many things I wanted for years. I tested everything and was surprised more than once, positively but also negatively. "100. What am I talking about? 1000 Apple product designers worked for a whole year on the design of the new iPhone, and the result looks at the first glance like an iPhone 14 Pro, that looked like an 13 Pro, that looked like the 12 Pro, and that looked like the 11 Pro. But how the iPhone looks and how it feels are two completely different worlds this year. The 15 Pro just feels great. The frame is a bit rounder, which makes it feel a lot thinner and way more ergonomic. You really don't understand that until you can feel it for yourself. In addition, the frame is now made out of titanium, a material that is both lighter and stronger than stainless steel. There are fewer scratches, dents, or simply dirt on the brushed titanium. Unfortunately, you can't say the same thing about the camera element. Still, dust collects around it like crazy. The lenses stick out way further than on any current Android smartphone, and that is unfortunate in case of a fall. I hoped that Apple would dare a new design this year. The same one over and over and over again is good for brand recognition, but it's boring for the consumer. I do like that it's now easier to repair the back glass if it cracks. In the past you had to remove the whole frame, and now it's just the glass, and that's good for the wallet and the environment. Both the iPhone 15 Pro and the Pro Max are 11 grams lighter, which sounds like little, but you can feel it, and 19 grams less, and that every day is over 7 kilograms a year. You think this comparison is lame? Yeah, but I'm not anymore, because the iPhone is so much lighter. Who wrote this crap? Where was I? Something with water resistance, 6 meter, 30 minutes, more than the Pixel, Xiaomi and Samsung combined. Oh yeah, and the colors. There are 4 colors: white, natural titanium, black, and a dark blue that looks often just like black. A bit of a dull color choice this year, but the natural titanium has my name written all over it. Both the iPhone 15 Pro and the Pro Max are about 1 mm shorter and narrower. The reason is the thinner display bezels, and I think they look super sexy. I never thought that the day would come when Apple has thinner bezels than a Samsung smartphone, and they are perfectly symmetrical all around. Apart from that, this is the same display as in the iPhone 14 Pro. Accurate colors, deep contrast and black level, a high resolution, and an adaptive refresh rate from 1 Hz to 120 Hz. And the outdoor brightness is still 2000 nits if you display a lot of black area. And speaking of black area, there's a long hole at the top of the display. Not only the selfie camera is in there, but also Face ID. That's a fast and reliable facial recognition that always recognizes me, except when I wear my sunglasses. But the black hole is also an adaptive widget. Apple calls it a dynamic island. Although the idea is cool, my everyday use is rare. It is practical to be able to jump back into your music playback or navigation. The animations are super fancy, and it makes total sense to get a call displayed there or additional information about an airdrop. Inside of the iPhone 15 Pro is the A17 Pro, and that's the world's first 3nm chip. But what exactly does that even mean? It means that more transistors fit in the same place, and therefore the efficiency and the performance is better. Apple says up to 10% for the CPU and up to 20% for the GPU, but is it true? The CPU is about 40% faster than the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 in Geekbench 6, which is currently the fastest Android processor, and the GPU is about 7% faster. However, the A17 Pro quickly throttles down 30% in the 3D Mark stress test, and 50% after 20 minutes. That's a bit of a shame to see, even though the performance is still higher than that of the Pixel 7 Pro without throttling. In everyday use, the performance is the same from an iPhone 14 Pro, which was already ultra fast and smooth. But this time there are iPhone exclusive games, and not just any. Real console titles like Resident Evil Village, Assassin's Creed Mirage, or The Division Resurgence. And they have really impressive graphics, including ray tracing light effects. But, and that is a big but, they don't run in full resolution. Plus, You are practically forced to use a gamepad because otherwise half of the picture is used for the controls. I found that the heat development is completely okay and the stereo speakers once again sound great. But speaking of future-proof, the iPhone will get many software updates up to 6 years in the past, and therefore we will still see iOS 23. But for now we have iOS 17 and some nice new features. You can fine-tune the lock screen. AirDrop has now a cool animation when you hold two iPhones close together, and widgets are interactive, which makes me very happy. You can make stickers out of any photo, or there is a standby display when the iPhone is charging. Lots and lots of little new features. And in general, I do appreciate how unified iOS looks and all of the beautiful and playful animations. But not everything is perfect. The keyboard autocorrect is still 100 times dumber than the one from Google, and the notification system is still more confusing than on Android. But as far as customization goes, I would argue that Apple now allows even more than Android itself. And the new action button is a great example for that. Since the first iPhone, there has been a switch on the side to toggle between loud and silent. Now it is gone and a button has taken its place. You can assign it freely. Holding it down still activates the silent mode if you wish so, but you can do a flashlight, or you can switch between wallpapers, or you can start the Google Assistant if you don't like Siri. The action button menu looks spectacular, but also somehow untypical for Apple. I find the action button is a great thing, but I would have loved to see a textured button that would be easier distinguishable from the volume rocker. I personally use the button for the camera because you can also take pictures and videos with it. And that is a good time to talk about the camera, isn't it? There are 3 lenses, a 12 megapixel ultra-wide, a large 48 megapixel main sensor and a 12 megapixel tele. The last are same year, but there are a few new features. Standard photos are no longer 12 megapixel, they are 24 megapixel. They are only 0.2 to 1 megabyte larger and by no means twice as sharp as you might expect, but they are 5 to maybe 10% sharper depending on the subject. In the new Max mode, the photos are twice as big, but they are also much sharper. That's why I use it. Compared to the Galaxy S23 Ultra with its 200 megapixel camera, you can still see that Samsung has more details and less digital over-sharpening than Apple. Second, the night and the portrait mode now have the photonic engine, which is a complicated name that at the end only means the photos are brighter and sharper. Third, the depth info is now saved with every photo, which means you can always select the portrait effect afterwards and control both the strength and the focal point. This is a feature that the Google Pixel had for 6 years now, but I'm not mad, I'm just glad it's here because it's really handy. You can now shoot in 28 and 35mm focal lengths in addition to 24mm. 35 megapixel is an exact 24 megapixel crop and I love that field of view because I use it on my regular camera all the time. There's now a new 5x telephoto camera, but only on the Pro Max, and it has a 25% larger 12 megapixel sensor and the same 2.8 aperture as the 3x camera. I've compared the 3x to the 5x a lot. And at 3x, the 15 Pro now looks much sharper than the 15 Pro Max. And it surely does at 4.9x zoom as well. At 5x, however, the 15 Pro Max is sharper, but not quite as much sharper as I would have expected. The 15 Pro can still keep up surprisingly well, even if you zoom in 10 times. Sure, the 15 Pro Max is undoubtedly better, but I did expect a little bit more. One explanation could be that the new lens technology is just a bit softer. Here's it next to the Pixel 7 Pro at 5x and next to the Galaxy S23 Ultra with 10x. My biggest criticism of the iPhone 15 Pro camera is the minimum focus distance of the 5x tele and the main camera. You have to be far away from your subject to be sharp. Very often the iPhone switches to the ultra-wide angle and that is just worse in quality compared to the main camera. I mean, look at the difference a good minimum focus distance can make. This is the Xiaomi 13 Pro with a Leica lens and the photos there look like a real camera in comparison. Apple does an extremely good job in terms of color reproduction, skin tones and dynamic range. Apart from the two bright mids, the iPhone pictures are reliably beautiful regardless of the focal length. Absolute star starters, but also professional photographers will have a lot of fun with this. The large 48 megapixel main sensor and the macro ultra wides are my highlight. You can now record videos in 4K 60 FPS ProRes to an external SSD over USB-C. And there is a lock color profile, which makes color grading much easier. There's only one thing that is very important to empathize. Apple compared the iPhone to a real cinema camera in its ad, and that couldn't be further from the truth. But compared to other smartphones, the iPhone is by far the best and now even better. The 15 Pro has a 2% larger battery and a 3nm processor. I expected a way better battery life, but unfortunately did not get it. The runtime is very similar to the predecessor. I mainly used the 15 Pro Max and got around 5.5 to 6.5 hours of display use until it was dead. If you are only in Wi-Fi and dark mode, you could add 1 or 2 hours on top of that. The regular 15 Pro is about 1 to 2 hours worse. So no record runtimes, but they can keep up with the Galaxy S23 Ultra or the Honor Magic 5 Pro. Charging is no longer done via Lightning, but finally with USB-C. Yes, the EU has forced Apple to do that, and what can I say? I'm grateful for it. It still feels a little bit surreal to have this port on an iPhone, but it is a true blessing. I can charge my MacBook, Android smartphone, iPad, my scale and my cordless screwdriver and the iPhone all with the same cable. They included a nice cable in the box, it is braided in fabric. All Lightning products still work if you use a €29 adapter. That's typical Apple fashion. I had hoped that the USB-C would mean that we could finally get fast charging in an iPhone, but unfortunately that is not the case. While current Android smartphones charge in about 20 to 30 minutes, the iPhone takes 1 hour longer, and that has nothing to do with battery health. I have become a fan of MagSafe. It is a magnetic wireless charging system. Apple is the first to support the G2 standard, and the major Android smartphones will follow with it in 2024. This is great news because it means that you can use all the accessories such as power banks, card holders, water bottles and much more with MagSafe on any phone soon. Conclusion: I enjoyed my time with the iPhone 15 Pro, and that is not because of one singular feature, but because of small details like the design, USB-C and the action button, and it is still available in 2 sizes, and that is not common nowadays. But I do also have criticism, and quite a lot of it. Not a huge one, but also tiny criticism, because still the camera is sticking out way too far and you can't really focus up close, and I think that the tele camera should also be in the small one. And I hoped for fast charging and for an even better battery life because of the A17 Pro, but that sadly did not happen. And then there is the price, and it is good news here in Europe because the prices actually went down from 100 to 130 euros, and the US they stay the same, which is great, especially for Apple. And I do think that the iPhone 16 Pro will not be dramatically different, and therefore I think this year is a good time to buy an iPhone if you want an iPhone.